Tariq Talk. Your host, Tariq Mendez, takes you on a journey with guests from all around the world. Broadcasting around the world. Around the world. This is Tariq Talk.
Hey guys, today we're here with Lawrence Ciarallo. How do you pronounce your last name? Sorry?
Ciarallo.
Ciarallo. Did I get it right?
Ciarallo.
Ciarallo.
There you go.
Very beautiful Italian name. So he's a fellow artist from ART150. We're only a few studios down from each other. Thank you so much for being here, Lawrence. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Do you mind start telling us about yourself a little bit?
Sure. I live in Hoboken, New Jersey. I've been doing art for about 10 years, and I got started in that because I was a major in graphic design at Montclair State University here in New Jersey. And towards the end of my studies there, since we had to, as part of our curriculum, we had to take some fine art courses, illustration, drawing, painting. I kind of continued doing that after my studies, even though, my focus was design. And it was just something I did at nights, weekends, and I've just kind of kept at it since then. Something to do aside from my 9-to-5 job.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. The thing I like about your work is that how you do like mixed media with graffiti and stuff.
Sure.
Do you mind? I saw you on your Instagram. I was checking it out. You had like the Pele art, which I loved. It was really dope. How do you do that? Like, how do you create like? I don't know how to do that. Medium, but it looks like media, like things glued to each other and then spray. Like, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, actually, I believe the Pele one, I think it was with the newspaper and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so that is actually, I do those in Photoshop, those portraits.
Oh, wow.
So that started because when I would do art markets and stuff, I would have my portraits on canvas, and they were priced at a certain price point.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially at the markets, customers kind of want something a little bit more affordable.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone made a suggestion of doing prints, and because of the way I do my portraits on canvas, the method is first in Photoshop I make a rough sketch that I used to stencil onto the canvas. Now I project it on.
Oh, wow.
So what I did was I would take that Photoshop file, and initially I just would print it onto that standard kind of legal stuff that's at the back of the newspaper.
Yeah.
And then I was doing a fair, and someone else came up with a good suggestion. They said, well, it'd be really cool if the newspaper articles had to do with the subject.
Oh, wow. And
so that's where those kind of came about, where I started to add color to make them look sort of photorealistic, and then I started to I would just Google search the person and add in news articles that had to do with them to make it a little bit more relevant.
Yeah, I did see the one behind Pele's was in Portuguese.
Yeah,
and I thought it was like pretty dope. Like such a good attention to detail. And I also saw you do graffiti.
A little bit. I'm not a writer. I'm not like the best with spray paint, but a lot of most urban areas or suburban areas, we're exposed to graffiti. United States, all over the world.
Yeah.
Wherever you go, and so I'm always looking to, especially my backgrounds, kind of add the grittiness. So I like doing that, and I also like when I'm creating my backgrounds. That's the part of the painting that's a little bit more free. I'm not painting the subject.
Yeah.
I'm not painting the main focal point where I have to be a little bit more precise. So it's a chance to just kind of cut loose and do a little bit of abstraction and stuff like that.
Oh, that's pretty dope. I always admired people that do graffiti with the stencils. Like sometimes it would just be like a portrait of somebody, but so many stencils go into that, and I love watching like videos. I think it's such like an intricate process. I saw, I don't know what you call those in English. It's like an electricity box.
Sure. Yeah. They
They
call it a utility box, but I think it's mostly.
Okay,
I think it's mostly the electrical stuff that like powers or whatever the street lights and all that kind of stuff.
Got you.
Yeah.
And then how do you approach it as an artist? Like, do you kind of just like freehand, or do you have to like plan things around when you do the graffiti murals?
It really depends. A lot of mine are planned because they're usually projects that are done by the city or the town that it's in. So it usually has a theme that you have to submit to.
You can't just like randomly go and start painting it?
No, I've never done like quote unquote illegal work. You know, occasionally a little like a wheat paste here or there, but I've never been one to like, you know, do stuff on the streets that wasn't approved. Yeah, I never done really unapproved work. So in those cases, the utility boxes, they always had a theme. And you know, I just went with the theme, whatever it was.
I always thought as long as it's like, let's say like family friendly, or you're not like damaging private property, you could just add some flavor to it. I didn't know it was like that.
Yeah, I guess it all depends. I mean, I guess it really all depends on, you know, if you were to get caught. Depends on, I guess, the cop. And I guess it would depend on a lot of other factors.
So when you're doing those, do people, like, do cops stop you and say, hey, do you have a permit? Can I see it? Or
no, I've never had that because I feel as though when those projects are going on, whoever is in charge of them, and again, it's usually like a city and then art organization partnership. I feel as though the cops are notified.
Already know,
I've never had a police officer think that I was doing something illegally. Maybe because it's broad daylight, so they don't think someone is so brazen to just be doing that.
Which makes sense, because like when you buy graffiti, like you have to give your ID nowadays. No, I never.
Yeah, and like now certain stores even have the spray paint locked up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you have to be. I guess.
And
you
they
have to be
walk
18.
you to the register when you're ready to pay.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I didn't know it was because of that.
Yeah.
And then like who are your creative like influences?
Well, you know, a lot of them are sort of like the bigger names that everyone know, the Warhol, Basquiat, Keith Haring, you know, obviously Shepard Fairey. I was heavily influenced, you know, his stencil work and stuff like that influenced. But then there's a lot of, you know, local artists whose work I really admire. Distort has a lot of murals in Jersey City. Was
he at the art fair 14C?
Yes, he was the guy who had
the murals.
He does a lot of murals in the city, I mean all over, and he has those, I don't know if he had the fire extinguishers, but it was the metal, and it was etched on the metal. He was in the showcase part, sort of by Bark the Dog's, like chair. And it was, he does all sorts of stuff. I mean, he does murals, drawings, and he's done a lot of work on metal surfaces, and then he would have, I don't know exactly how he did it, but he would basically unravel like a fire extinguisher, and he would etch and paint onto him. So Distort, you know, he's really great. You know, there's so many local artists. There's a local artist he's based out of Newark, like Nuna Yawar, which I believe he used to go by Lunar New Year. And so, I mean, his murals and his.
Is that the one that like has that lady with the like? You only see her eyes in the mural?
It's possible. One of the really good works he's done recently is in the new Terminal A at Newark Airport. He did a massive mural that was installed. I believe he did it off-site, and then it was installed. And it's all about sort of, you know, it's an airport, so a lot of it has to do with the immigrant experience. I mean, Newark's a big city for immigrants, and also you know, how it's the ancestral homeland of the Lenni Lenape tribe, so there's a lot of that in there. His work, you know, is really inspirational. There's another artist comes to mind is Brittany Williams, I believe is her name. She did a portrait of Michelle Obama in Newark, a mural. It was really good. There's another artist, Gaia. He's done work all over the world. He's a really incredible muralist. I mean, his work is photorealistic, and it's just what he does with spray cans and rollers and brushes is like, it blows my mind. You know, and I mean, a lot of the artists in 150, I really enjoy seeing a lot of the work created there. You know, the artists that I showed with at 14C, Fabrizio, Kirk Bray, Lucy Rovetto, you know, I really enjoy their work.
You guys had a beautiful booth.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good opportunity. I really appreciate it. It was really nice to show work alongside those talented artists. And, you know, it seems like because of where we live, there's no end to the amount of artists, whether they have a following and they have, you know, a certain amount of fame or not. There's just so much good art that you can really take in and be inspired by. So it really doesn't end.
cool. Thank you for sharing that. And then, what's your creative process like? Are you like a night person or a morning
I used to be. I was definitely, like, when I first started, I was definitely a night person. Out of college, I got a job as a video editor.
Oh, cool.
And so I would do that, and then I'd come home, and the routine was usually like come home, I would like exercise, and then I would just, at the time I was still living at home with my dad, and I had my basement room, and I set up like a small little studio.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, so, you know, he was really supportive of it, and, you know, I would just kind of work. He would always get concerned because I would forget to eat dinner.
That means you're in the zone.
Yeah, so I was in the zone. So I was definitely a night person then, and, you know, when I moved to Hoboken just over 10 years ago, I had a studio in the Newman Leather building. My friend, I sublet space from him. And so I did, again, always working on the weekends and after work. And then I really became, I guess around the time my daughter was born, 2 years ago, I started
Congrats on the baby.
Yeah, thank you. She's great. Real blessing. That's when I started to transition.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be working overnight.
Yeah.
So then I get less time in, but, you know, I usually get one Saturday, you know, 1 day a week, usually a Saturday, all day in there. So I'm more of a, you know, daytime worker. I don't know if it's changed my process. The only thing that's changed is you can, when you didn't have other obligations, you could really focus on a painting.
Yeah.
Even if you had to go to work, right? You knew you could come home and work on it.
Like control your time.
You can control your time. Now I know it's usually
It's
1 day a week.
Yeah.
So it's like,
if you're ever lucky, right?
yeah. So sometimes, you know, you can't get there. It's definitely a different process of, you know, approaching the work, coming back to it, feeling like you haven't really seen it in a little bit. But yeah.
Wait, I have a question because I'm really confused right now because you said like 10 years this, 10 years this. How old are you exactly?
I'm 37.
Wow.
I'm gonna be 38 in
Bro,
December.
I thought you were like 30, 31. Like,
no, I'm 37.
Wow.
Yeah, I was born in 85.
Oh wow, you look so young.
Thank you.
When you started talking like 10 years, I was like, wait a minute. I thought we were like the same age or something. Oh, that's
I
dumb.
graduated from Montclair State in the winter of 2008.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty dope. Thank you for sharing that. And then, like, how does your ideas work? Like, do you have to do they just come sporadically to you, or do you have to kind of go into like a state of searching for ideas to get inspired for your project?
I definitely think there's a lot of searching.
Yeah.
With the portraits, which I haven't done too many recently, but with the portraits, there's a little bit of, I know who I kind of want to paint. I have a sort of running list, even if it's not written down in the back of my head, of, you know, musicians, authors. I may read someone's book or biography and want to paint them. With the other works, it is definitely a little bit of a search sometimes, because I use a lot of collage in my, you know, in the mixed media pieces. Sometimes it'll be, you know, because generally what I would do is I would have a whole bunch of newspapers. I'd go through them all, cut out the materials, and I have a folder.
Oh, nice.
And then sometimes it would be just going through the folder and almost letting the mixed media kind of dictate where the piece was going to go. But it definitely is kind of, you know, it definitely is a searching, you know, maybe going to art openings or even just walking around the cities, you know, walk around New York, walk around Jersey City, walk around Hoboken, you get a little bit of inspiration. Sometimes, as we all know, a piece could sit for a year, 6 months, and then you come back to it because you have a fresh idea how you want to approach it. Actually, something I'm working on right now in the studio, I first started painting it in the summer of 2020, like during whatever, I guess it was past the lockdown, but it was still COVID, and I had started it, and I had put it to the side because, you know, other stuff, commissions and other paintings I was working on, and now I just picked it up recently.
Yeah.
The idea of the kind of graphic I wanted to put on it came to me, and so I've just started working on that now.
Oh, that's pretty dope. Do you think having a child has inspired you a little bit more to be endless and boundless with your creativity?
I think it definitely teaches you to be balanced. It does inspire me to be creative in the sense that it's a joy to show her my paintings, see her reaction.
What's her name?
Her name's Amelia.
Amelia, shout out to Amelia.
Yeah. You know, she's come to the studio a couple times.
Yeah.
She likes art. You know, I mean, most kids I feel like, because that's what she does in daycare a lot, is a lot of artistic projects. She likes to, paint and color in her coloring books and stuff. So it's it's like with parents who are musicians. It's always nice to expose your kids to those things. It's definitely an enriching thing, and she's definitely an inspiration. She doesn't. I wouldn't say she like directly inspires any piece in particular, but yeah, she definitely inspires me in certain ways.
That's really dope. Because when I had the first episode, I was talking to Masha. Shout out to Masha. And we were talking about like where do you see ourselves in the future, and then she mentioned, and I agreed, like having your kid in your studio probably seems like the ultimate coolest thing ever, and you're doing it, so congrats on that.
Yeah, it was really great when she comes in and just sees it.
Yeah.
Because we show her the pictures, you say it's Daddy's painting, but then she comes in and she sees some of them in person.
And what's her reaction? Is she like,
yeah, she'll I like it, or I mean, kid, it's like anyone, the colors are so stimulating, because a lot of my work is colorful, so she really likes that, and it's really great.
And what's your favorite medium? Do you like to do like graffiti or painting, or do you have a preference, or you just kind of like a little bit of everything?
Since I haven't done too many portraits, I like the mixed media pieces, and they're mostly acrylic with a little bit of spray paint. That seems to be the medium that I'm going, and I kind of like, some of my work can be a little more graphic, so I like that the depth that mixed media gives you, whereas you're collaging, then you're painting on top of it. It definitely adds to the feel of the piece.
Okay, dope. Do you think, as previous episode we talked about this, do you think having like a art studio has helped your work and like your discipline as an artist?
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I first moved into the Newman Leather building, one of the things I found beneficial was to have, the people in the studio were my friends. They were doing, they weren't artists. They had like a startup, but it's just always good for people to see your work while it's going on. And even if they're not artists, it's not like you have to listen to every word they say, but it's just good to have feedback, and it's, sometimes it's good to hear like someone be like, I don't like it. They're not always gonna be like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Like constructive criticism.
It's always good to have that. It's good to have, people coming into the studio and seeing your work. It's good to have that sense of community. That's what that's why, I know we're our studios, and, everyone's always in there doing their work, but that's why I like 150 Bay a little bit, because it is an artistic community that's growing, and, there's always going to be people seeing your work. There's always people you can bounce ideas off of and stuff like that. Whereas like, when I was first starting, I was in my basement by myself. So I'd have to invite a friend over. Or as my dad would see my work. So it's like you don't have that same thing, of other artists and just, random people coming through the building. I do think that definitely helps a lot. There was actually a period between going to 150 and when my old studio, I did work in my apartment, and I don't know if my creativity was stifled, but it was only my wife that would see my work.
Okay.
She was definitely very helpful with like being like, giving a critical eye to it and stuff like that, but it's only one person. And you are kind of you're by yourself working, and it's, to get people in there to see the work, you're not going to get that where you are in a studio setting.
So when you're working art, and like if people come talk to you, are you able to not get distracted? Like, do you like that kind of like engagement and speaking with people while the work is going on, or do you kind of prefer to show it like after it's finished? Or
it's interesting because when I've done like my public art, the murals and other things, you have to talk to people. That I don't mind. That's actually one of the things I really love about doing murals and public art is the interactions you have, the compliments, talking to people, taking a break, seeing what they, hearing what people think. When I'm in my studio, I like to get in the zone, and I guess it's more like when I invite people in or when we have events.
Okay.
Because when I first moved in, I didn't have anything over my windows, and it was almost like a fish in a fishbowl kind of thing, where sometimes there'd be people walking through, and like they'd be watching you work. And I remember you know, I wasn't anxious, but it was like a little uneasy.
Yeah. And then
But-
I'm like, oh, come in, and then you talk, and then yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it depends what stage I'm at in the painting. You know, what part of the day it is.
Yeah.
If I'm like, because if I'm deep in concentration, you know, I'm not getting out of the zone.
Yeah.
But if it's maybe I'm taking a break, having some coffee or whatever, you know, I'll talk about my work. So
Yeah.
it kind of varies.
And when you're working on a project, are you the type of person that like you have to keep working on it till you finish, or are you able to like, okay, let me stop for the day, come back tomorrow refreshed?
Yeah, I
Like,
can.
what's your process like?
Yeah, I can definitely stop. I used to be a little bit more like want to get this finished, obsessing over it. But I found in my case, I'm sure this happens with a lot of artists. In my case, was like those are the times where you maybe overwork something,
Yeah.
or you do something that you're like, you know,
Less is more.
yeah, why did I do that?
Yeah.
And then you end up doing more because then you have to fix something.
It's like downhill from there.
I feel like most artists, you know, so many artists I talk to,
Yeah.
they go through that where the hardest part is stepping away
Yeah.
because you're always looking at a painting, you always feel like unless it's like a set thing,
Yeah.
you know, portraits are a little different, whereas like it's the person. The other ones you always feel you can add this, you can add that. Oh, can I get this line a little crisper, so on and so forth. I've definitely gotten a lot better at being able to just put the brushes down, and you know you come back, new day, especially when it's not a commission or anything.
Yeah.
So I don't have a deadline. So yes, I want to get it done because I want to show it, and
Yeah.
you know have it maybe submit to gallery shows and stuff like that. But you know there's not that urgent need.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, you got to get this done right now
Yeah.
because you know you can't force those things.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
And what's the longest like artwork that you spend like time creating on?
Probably some of the murals.
Murals?
Yeah, because just the scale of them.
Yeah.
You know, the one in the Laurel Hill one in Newark, and
Is it still up?
as far as I know,
Yeah. Okay.
I know that there was the building that it was on was vacant. I know there was a fire in the building, but the wall was intact. That was years ago, and I know that the portrait of Laurel Hill didn't get tagged like the background did,
Yeah.
which I actually was like, oh, they didn't tag over the portrait, so that
Yeah.
means they like the portrait. I believe it's still up. So that one, and just because of the size, you know,
Yeah.
they take, you know, a month or so.
Yeah. Oh
You
wow.
know.
I didn't know it was that. That's
Two,
pretty dope.
yeah, 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say.
And now speaking with you, I'm like get into like the mind of a graffiti artist. Do you guys have to like step all the way back and then go close to it and then step all the way back, or?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, especially you know, a number of my larger murals have been portraits. So
Okay.
yeah. Now in that case, no, yeah, and then you're on I've never had to do ones where you're on a scissor lift or on
Okay.
scaffold or anything.
Yeah.
They've always been like 16 feet or less
Okay.
tall,
Yeah.
so I've been able to use a ladder. But yeah, you gotta. It's definitely it's like a
Yeah.
new experience because it's a bigger canvas, right? And it's not like in the studio where you're working on a small area. You step back, go
Yeah.
in. You gotta get off the ladder, look,
Yeah.
and it's always and you don't know how a surface is going to respond.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
All the surfaces are different, so
Yeah.
it's always a learning experience. Yeah.
That's also a thing I find fascinating about graffiti murals. How people, before they even get to painting or graffitiing, like how much, what do you call like in English, like the white part, the prime, how much you have to prime the surface.
Yeah.
I always found like that fascinating. And then like I like watching like, documentaries and I remember this guy talking about like the quality and the type of the brick, because some bricks absorb a lot of the paint, some
Yeah.
doesn't. So it's like, and I thought that was like so fascinating.
Yeah.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah, and then there's the unknown of, you prime a wall and there's been times where there's like multiple layers of primer, so some of it starts to peel off. There's all sorts of variables that when you get out there, you kind of, you get acclimated to. I mean, I'm still kind of consider myself learning when it comes to murals because
Yeah.
I've only done, half a dozen.
Yeah.
So it's still something that I'm learning and getting a hang of. In
Well,
that
that's pretty
sense.
dope.
Yeah.
I hope to see something really dope for JCast this year.
Yeah.
So with what do you call I think JMap or
JC Map.
JC Map.
Yeah.
they're listening, hopefully reach out to Lauren so we can get a dope ass mural.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a couple for JC Map
Cool.
when they first started. I don't remember exactly what year they started, but I remember when they started out. And you know, special thanks to Brooke Hansen. She definitely gave me a lot of opportunities when I was, you know, first getting into murals, and when they were, you know, just starting up. Yeah, I've done ones in a couple of the parks here, on Bergen Ave near McGinley Square, and yeah, I mean, what they're doing in the city is really great. I mean, they got local artists, international artists. It's really, you know, it really brings a vibrancy. So
Yeah, they have a pretty dope program.
yeah, and they, you know, the thing they do with the kids, the high school kids.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, they have a youth program. They even have I think they have a summer camp, and they have every year. There's Catherine Hart is one of the artists, and there's another gentleman. They've done multiple. I guess they're on the high schools. One is on
Okay.
Ferris High School, right on Columbus, by the overpass. You know where
Oh,
78, like the
Yeah,
Turnpike
yeah.
extension. There's a high school right there,
Okay.
Ferris High School. They did one. I think it was last summer.
Oh, nice.
So every year they've been doing that, which is really cool because it's artist led, and I'm sure the artists help in a certain way,
Yeah.
but it's the kids paint the mural. So that's
it's like a collective of.
exactly
Oh,
yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a really great program they do. They even made a documentary about it one year. So yeah, they
I'll
do a
check
lot
that
of.
out. That's
yeah,
really
they-
nice.
I forget. I can't
That's
recall what the
pretty cool,
documentary
yeah.
is called. I believe it was before COVID. I want to say like 2018,
Okay.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Going back to a young Lawrence, if you could go back, this I always find fascinating to ask. If you go back to your younger self, just like walk in whatever studio you were, like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, what's an advice you would tell yourself?
Well, the funny thing is, 20 years ago, I didn't do too much art.
No.
No, I did. I mean, it's interesting. Growing up, my brother's a drummer. He's a musician.
Oh wow.
Well, he has a job, but
Yeah.
he's a drummer. He was the artistic sort of one. Like, from the time he could walk, he wanted a drum set. And from the time I could walk, I was a sports guy. Like
Oh wow.
basketball, soccer, baseball. You know, I did all that stuff. So it wasn't really until I was going into college that I mean, I did art. You know, I loved to
Yeah.
draw as a kid. I did art classes, and you know, up until high school. But it wasn't until I was going to college that I got into design, and then therefore design, I got into art. So I guess the thing I would say 20 years ago is you don't know what the future holds in the
Yeah.
sense that, like, you know, 20 years ago or even, you know, 30 years ago when I was like 7 years old, like I wanted to be in the NBA.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I want to be in the NBA, you know, or I want to play soccer or whatever it was. But, you know, 200
Yeah.
people make the NBA, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's like winning the lottery. So I would guess you know, you don't know where it's going to take you, because I didn't think I would be an artist
Yeah.
probably back then, or, you know, doing the kind of paintings. I mean, our work evolves. My work's evolved even from when I started painting 10 years ago. And so, you know, I guess never, you know, close yourself off to an idea or opportunity or think you can't do something.
Yeah.
You know, because I could definitely paint and draw a lot better than I did, or even would have thought I could,
Yeah.
you know, when I was like a teenager, because I wasn't even thinking about that. And, you know, I'm definitely, you know, better than I was 10 years ago. So it's definitely a kind of a thing where, you know, stay open to things. You can always do something new. You
Yeah.
can always reinvent yourself in that sense.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
And do you think your love for sports has like influenced your work? Because I see a lot of athletes sometimes in your work.
Yeah, definitely. You know, kind of the people that I've painted, you know, it's usually someone I've admired, you know, or, you know, someone whose example I think everyone could learn from and stuff like that. And I kind of see, you know, I know they're different entities, but sports, arts, fashion, music, it's all part of, you know, the culture of wherever you live and, you know, wherever you are. And so that's, you know, definitely, you know, part of it, where, you know, I don't see them kind of completely separate. You know, you can.
They're all like influenced by.
Yeah,
each
you
other
can.
in a way,
Yeah, you know, you can be influenced by the work ethic of an athlete and imply that to your artwork,
Yeah.
or a musician, or a writer, or whatnot.
That's pretty dope. Going back to the murals, how did you like as you mentioned, your love for sports and everything. What was like the moment during college that you started to do art and practice art that you felt like, oh wow, this could be something that I really enjoy?
It was towards the end of my studies. I was getting close to graduating. I remember having, the painting classes, not being particularly too good at it, not necessarily having, outside of the assignment, not having a focus or desire to do it, being, I guess, intimidated because, it's like anything. It's like you look at someone's painting, say, how did they do that? And I wish I could remember the teacher's name. He wasn't my professor, but I was early to a class, and so I was waiting. It was in the drawing studio, so my friend was there. I was talking to him, and I'll never forget this professor was talking to one of his students, and he said, "Don't get intimidated. Just remember, it's pigment next to pigment."
Oh wow.
And that's all it is.
Yeah.
Because the mistake I made, I'm sure a lot of people make, is you look at a hand or you look at anything, you're trying to draw it exactly and trying to make it perfect. But if you're trying to draw the hand or the apple or whatever it is, you're not going to, because you just kind of have, I don't know, you just have
so obsessive trying to be perfect.
Exactly, right? So I remember that kind of unlocking something in my head, because of the design work that I was, studying and doing, just always, loving seeing art, the kind of art that I really enjoyed, the muralist, the graffiti, wanting to do something like that. And, obviously around that time, Shepard Fairey, I mean, I know he's, still very famous, but that was at the time of the Obama Hope poster. So he was like, really blowing up. And I just remember thinking, like, there's always a way to express yourself, right? He uses stencils. There's always a medium. So I was getting into stencil work, and I remember just making little one-offs. I would give them to my friends.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, I would just, like little. I remember the first one I made was actually the very first stenciled portrait I made was of Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine, the lead singer.
Oh wow.
And I remember, I guess it's like one of those things. If you a musician, you write a song, you see the end product, you're like, oh wow, like I'm gonna keep going at this and see where it takes me. And I guess, I mean, that's really, really all it was. And then then the second part of it, I always saw working in the studio or working at home, wherever I was working, my art was a way to not be going out and wasting money on nonsense, Not that I didn't.
Not that you didn't, because you had to buy some art supplies.
But not that I didn't like go out and party. But you see, I mean, we all see it. You see young people and they have no real direction or focus. And, I mean, their main thing is just getting messed up on the weekends, getting drunk and doing all that kind of stuff. So it was like, what am I going to do? I'm not just going to do this all the time, and I'm not just going to party my life away. So
was it like a conscious choice, or just like subconsciously you saw your friends?
No, it was a conscious choice. And not because I saw anything terrible. It was just, maybe it was part boredom. Going to similar places, doing the same old things, kind of thing. But it was, and also I had a lot of friends who were musicians, so I'd always seen them have that outlet, right? Where, we would hang out, party, whatever, and then they would have something to, kind of do. And so I guess once I transitioned out of playing sports, I was looking for something else. And it was just a good way. And then especially when I moved out and I moved to Hoboken, it was even better way to not be going out and wasting money at bars and stuff like that.
Especially Hoboken would be so tempting.
I mean, it was
so many bars.
It was very, very tempting, but it was a good way of not doing that and not, because at the end of the day, it's just a waste of time.
No, yeah, definitely. And going back to inspirations, how do ideas come to you? Like for me, like when I'm in motion, when I'm waking up, going to sleep, those are like when I have the best ideas, like when I'm driving. How, like, I don't know, is it like a spiritual thing? They just like pop in your head, or
I have similar experiences. You're saying I could be driving. I should really probably start putting like I know a lot of people put a notebook next to their bed to just even write things down. because that happens to me more so when I'm waking up, not necessarily maybe when I'm going to sleep. But yeah, I just, for instance, that the piece I was talking about that I had started, 3 years ago, and I put to the side because I knew what I wanted to do in terms of the background. I knew kind of the subject matter, but then the graphic that went on top, I didn't really know what it was. And then the other day, I just had this idea of, because the piece is based on, there's a song. Are you familiar with the group called Run the Jewels, the hip hop group?
No.
They're a hip hop duo, and they've been around. I don't know how long. Anyway,
Is it like during the Beastie Boys era? Is that,
no, they're right now.
Oh, they're my bad.
Well, one of the guys, they've been rapping for that long. They're older than I am. I believe they're both in their 40s. So these guys, one guy's from Atlanta, Killer Mike. He's done songs with Outkast going back to the 2000s, and then the other guy, LP, is from New York, and he's been rapping, since like the 90s. They've both been rapping for a long time. Anyway, they formed this duo, and in 2020 they came out with, I don't know, I think it was their 4th album. Anyway, there's a song on it, and the hook is, "Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar."
Oh wow!
All right, yeah. So I made this. It's actually a whole bunch of skateboards that I mounted on wood, and I had collaged all the skateboards, and then I was just doing random spray paint, splatter paint, and then I had this stencil that just said "Look," and I just was spray painting that stencil all over it. So I had this big canvas, and it just said "Look" everywhere.
Yeah.
But then it was, so I knew that, I was basing it off the painting. I got the idea, I understood kind of what they were saying in the song, but what's the focal point going to be? And so this idea of a graphic that had, there's a businessman in a suit with, he doesn't have a head though, and then there's telephone lines and a city skyline that connect to a picture of Harriet Tubman and I don't know if it's Federal Hall. Anyway, where the people who wrote the Declaration of Independence met in Philadelphia, and then there's some flowers around it.
Yeah.
And I got what I'm trying to convey in it is the connection from the creation of the United States of America through the period of and then through the period of slavery, and then the connection to the, I guess you want to say, modern times, which is represented by the power lines, the city skyline, and this gentleman without, in a suit. And it is a, I can't think of the word. It's kind of, oh man, I wish I could think of the word. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's not investigating, but it's exploring the idea of the beauty that can exist in this country despite all the flaws, the plurality that exists in this country, where you had a country created with a declaration that said all men are created equal. We know they weren't. We know there was slavery. We know there was Jim Crow. We know there was all these terrible things. But then there's, the businessman represents capitalism. So there's the negative, but then there's the positive of there's still beauty that exists. That's what the flowers kind of represent. There's still beauty that exists within this. There's still progress that has been made. There's still wonderful things, and there's still something very beautiful about a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-everything democratic society. For all, because I always focus on the people. Our government has many faults, and we could talk about those. That's an endless thing.
Forever,
it could be here forever, and you can use any country, right? Governments are governments, but the people, the people are beautiful, and the people are what push social change and all that kind of stuff. So that's where I was really going with that. But that idea didn't come to. I mean, I pushed that aside for 3 years, and I couldn't really. But then the other day, just like you're saying, it's almost you could be in the car or you could be running or whatever, and comes into your head, and then. In that case, then I try to get quickly on working on at least a graphic or something just to get it out of me.
That's pretty dope. Is the work finished? Because I'd love to include in like the.
No.
Instagram.
No, it's still a work in progress.
No rush. Yeah. But that would be like really, really dope.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have it done in time for anything that happens in the fall,
Yeah.
like J-Cast
Oh,
or anything
cool.
like that.
Yeah. And those are the ones on the skateboard you mentioned, right?
Yeah, it's on the
that's gonna be
skateboard.
dope. And you had 3 of them?
No, it's actually one painting.
No, like you said, you had 3 skate decks. Is that
Oh
what
no,
you
it's
said?
actually, I think it's like 8 or 9
Oh
skateboards.
wow.
Yeah.
And did you like take the wheels out?
Yeah, the wheels are. Actually, what it was when I first started painting, I did some paintings that incorporated skateboards, and I had some friends that were skateboarders.
Yeah.
And so anytime they had a deck that they were going to throw away, I just said, "Give it to me." So that was another thing. I had these skateboards in my studio for so long, and I
Oh,
never
that's cool.
had done anything. And so then, COVID gave us a lot of time to work on stuff. So
Yeah.
I
That's
did
amazing.
get a lot of ideas out during the first parts of COVID.
So when you're working on something and you kind of feel like it's not going anywhere, to you, you're like, my God, this sucks. Like, I wasted my whole day. Are you the type to like throw it out and get angry, or do you like kind of leave it like in the corner of your studio and think I'm gonna go work back on that?
I'm not the kind to throw it out. I am the kind I will put it to the side and go
Uh-huh.
back to it, and I'm not afraid to paint over it. I had a painting I'm actually doing for my dad. He wanted something like, he gave me like a general outline of what he wanted. He showed me some pictures, and I was talking to my wife about this because every day in the studio isn't perfect, obviously,
Yeah.
and sometimes you have those days where you spend 6-7 hours, and when you stand up and you leave, you don't like what you see.
Yeah.
So I worked on this painting for my dad. I spent a whole Saturday, and when I was leaving, I said, "This looks terrible."
Yeah.
It does. I mean, it wasn't completed, but it was
Yeah.
getting towards there. Said, "This looks really bad, and I don't like it, and it doesn't feel good to have spent all this time in the studio
Yeah.
today." But so I painted over it.
Yeah.
I always am. Coaching myself, you can't go into the studio every day with the expectation that you're gonna, have a perfect day where
Yeah.
you're gonna get, exactly what you want to do done, and it's gonna work out this way. It's just not how art
Yeah.
is. I think my mind has, I had to switch my mind off because my day job, I still work in a crate shop.
Okay.
It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
You get a piece of paper,
Like black and white. Yeah.
you cut the wood to the
Yeah.
size, and you put it together. And
Yeah.
there's not much. There's
Yeah.
nothing. There's no creativity to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to change your mind a little bit and realize that you're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have good days. You're gonna have days where you want to paint over it, or maybe you want to throw it away. Stuff like that.
And like, how do you cope with that? Because to me, there's nothing worse like when you have a great day. Like when I go to the gym, I do everything I have to do, and I'm like, oh, today's going perfect. It's 11 a.m. I woke up early, then you get to the art studio, and then everything goes to like crap. Like, how do you cope with that? Do you like have a mini mental breakdown? Like,
I guess I don't know. I'll talk to my wife about it.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, man, today was really bad.
Yeah.
The painting looks terrible.
Yeah.
I wasted a whole day there. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I try to avoid having the breakdown where just reminding myself that days like this happen.
Yeah.
I guess it would also depend if it was a commission or something like that.
There's a deadline, as you said.
Yeah, or if there was, again, if there was some type of monetary, if there was money on the line, maybe I'm sure I would react differently.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's a little bit more. It's definitely more free, so I didn't have a similar reaction. But yeah, there's been times where it's someone that's a commission or something, and it's really frustrating you, and you really get close to losing it.
Yeah.
In that case, step away.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
Immediately ASAP, right?
Yeah, step away and just get a hold of things.
Yeah. And then what's your creative process like when as soon as you get to the studio, you're able to like get to work right away, or do you kind of like chill, have a coffee, whatever, relax?
Yeah, I'm more so where I relax.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with the notion of sitting with your work.
Yeah.
And obviously it depends. If I'm starting something, maybe I'll do a little bit right away. But if I have something work in progress, I'll come in, have some coffee, look at the work a little bit, put something on the computer. Since I'm working on Saturdays, usually I put some soccer on in the background, my laptop, and then I'll get to it. But yeah, give myself, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, usually I have some notes I've taken to writing notes like next to the painting,
Oh, wow.
because like just in case I forget something when I come back the next week, so I go to my notes and stuff like that. If I'm starting a painting, and if I'm gonna collage or mix media, I may just right away jump in and try to get something down and then take a break. But yeah, I do really enjoy coming in and sitting with it, looking at it, and then going from there.
Oh, wow. And have you always been like that? Like, as you like what you said, I'm like now I'm like that in my life. But like when I was younger, like 10 years ago, I was just like be able to just go in, boom, 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 get things done. But now like the process is to me is more inspiring. I have to sit there, as you said, have a coffee.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I first started, I was like that, just jumping right in, and then I found that if you think the direction it's going in, but I don't want to say you mess up, but you mess up.
Yeah.
To a degree. You maybe do too much.
Yeah.
You go a little overboard with a certain element or something like that. My feeling is when you sit with it more, you think about it more, and you really get a clear idea of what you want the piece to be saying, and that's definitely important to flesh that out before you go in. Sometimes, I would just jump right in and I didn't have a clear idea, and that often what happens, you just end up wasting time.
Yeah.
So try to avoid that. You make, the optimal use of the hours you have.
Yeah. And since you do graffiti and like multimedia, do you sometimes use like the byproduct of things? Like, as you said, you keep like a folder with collages for future projects. Do you I really like when people kind of use like the spray can or like the cap into their work. Do you do anything like that?
I did.
Yeah.
When I was first painting, I have some, I don't even know if some people probably have them somewhere. Some I got rid of just because they weren't, it's kind of like not necessarily the style, didn't really match what my art had progressed to. But yeah, some of my early pieces, I just had all sorts of found objects or my stuff, just old shoes. And, I have 3 or 4 pieces where I would attach it to a canvas or a piece of wood or whatever, prime it, and then just abstract. And it was, spray cans, old records, CDs,
oh, that's pretty dope.
Bottle caps, spray paint cans, fake plastic flowers, all stuff like that. So yeah, I have not done that in a while, but I used to do that a lot more. Yeah.
And in like terms of your work, are you like consciously thinking when you're creating, when you're not creating? Like, are you thinking like, oh, in 10 years I wanna, like, are you trying to like always learn something new or just make what you do better? Like, do you think, okay, in 10 years I want to do this, or in 10 years I want to do like, I don't know, build a house and have it like, like a functional sculptural graffiti type of whatever?
I think that I feel like I want my work not to be confined to a certain thing, I mean, we all have a style, but I don't want to confine it to, it has to be this or that, or it has to look exactly like this. I think we all make plans. 10 years I'm going to do this, 5 years I'm going to do that. They generally have to change those plans and something else comes along. But I don't have the desire to like confine my work where I only going to paint in a certain style or a certain type of painting. I feel like all artists should feel free to do, not whatever they want, but express yourself. Because I mean, so many artists have had different phases and their works look different, or they did this or that, because I guess it's the distinction between a commercial artist and I don't know, fine artist, I guess, is sometimes it seems like too hoity-toity of a word, but that's kind of the difference. I'm not against commercial work or commercial artists. There's they're very talented too, and they produce great work. But I don't want to get stuck in that lane where I'm only doing the Photoshop, portraits, or I'm only doing this or that. I want to leave it open to explore new, new things. I mean, you can see it in a lot of artists too, where they're always exploring new surfaces, new materials, different, because there's always new ways of mark making, because that's all it is. It's mark making,
Yeah.
So there's always a new way, a new thing to explore.
And what do you do like when you have, I don't know like the right word or term for the artwork, but like what do you do when you have like writer's block? Do you like reference your old work? Like do you ever go back and try to get like some vibes off of that?
Yeah, I do that. It's a really good question. I do that. I do go on like social media and stuff and look around. The thing with that is I don't want to be too influenced where I'm making something that is
a copy, kind of.
A copy, or you see a lot too is like people say like, oh, this is inspired by, but it's really sort of like a bootleg. Or a copy.
Sometimes it's like a subconscious copy that they don't even realize until you're
they don't realize it.
And they're like, oh my god, you're right.
I try to avoid that. So that's why I mean, I enjoy looking at work, but I want to avoid maybe biting someone's idea. So I'll go look back at old work. Maybe I'll read a book or something. Something to give me inspiration. A lot of times I don't do it as often now, but a lot of times just going out. We live in such a this densely populated area. You just get overloaded with information, visual information, everything. So that definitely helps, just going out there, because you can never tell what's like you say, things pop into your head. So you could be walking on the street, see someone, see a car, I don't know, see anything that just says, oh man, I'm gonna do that now. So that's the one thing I really like about, one of the aspects of like living in a urban, densely populated areas. There seems to be a never-ending stream of things that can inspire you. I also do think it's okay when you have writer's block to just sit with it and not feel like you have to. I forget, can't remember who it was, but an artist was talking about that on Instagram. It was like, I just sit with it and it's okay.
Wait, is that I just saw some, like I had like 10 people send me this video. Is it like, and I feel like it's like this spiritual universal thing because everybody's talking about. Is this like the guy that's like black and white, and he's talking to somebody off camera? Because they said, I just got that.
It
exactly
might be.
What you said.
I don't remember. I did see it. I did see it on Instagram.
But
it wasn't too recently that I can recall exactly what it was. But it was something like that. Saying just sit with it and let it be. Let the writer's block be. You don't feel the need that you have to create something. It'll come to you. Because that's part of it. I think. Because this is something else I saw on social media. I don't know if it was the same account. It was like we have, artists. Maybe we have the tendency to adopt sort of like, because we live in a capitalist society, because we live in New York, where it's like you got to produce all the time. We get that in our head where it's like, all right, I'm done with this painting. What's the next one? I'm done with this. What's the next one? But that's not always how art works. I mean, think about like musicians. They write an album, and they go tour. They play that album, and then they don't go back
like
in
4, 5, 6 years.
It could be it could be that amount of time. So, But then I understand the opposite, because I'm the same way. Is like I want to be producing new work. I want to be putting new work out there for people to see and stuff like that. So that's always the constant back and forth.
And do you keep like an archive of your work, like the earliest piece you've done until now? Like, do you have like images saved or something like that?
I think so.
That would be really cool to see.
I think so. The Zach De La Roca one. I know I have that canvas somewhere. I'm sure some of my friends still have the original canvases that I did for them of the portraits, like real crude black and white stencil with a colored background is basically all it was. I know some of them have those. Some portraits, pictures of some of the artwork has to exist somewhere. If I don't have them, somebody's got to have them. And I mean, I think I have an archive of them somewhere. I feel like I photographed a lot of the work. Maybe I deleted them, like if I took them off my website.
Yeah.
And then some of them, like, some of the early paintings I was saving, saying, oh, these are my first works, but then I whittled it down to kind of 2 or 3 that I said, okay, this is, this was really what I want to save, and then the rest I think I got rid of.
Like, what advice do you have for young artists that like are starting out, but they don't know how to do it? Like, whether it's somebody that wants to go to art school or not, like, what advice would you give them?
Some of the advice I always got that I kind of pass along, and some advice I've heard from musicians and having, friends, and my brother, like I said, being in bands for so long, is you just have to do it.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Go for
you
it.
do your artwork, and then whatever opportunity feels right, do it. Because the goal is to get people to see your art, whereas musicians want people to hear their music. So if that means getting a vendor, like a street vendor permit, and setting yourself up on a sidewalk in New York City and trying to sell your artwork, or in Jersey or wherever, if that means doing street fair, I did a lot of street fairs. I did, art markets. I applied to open calls. I did, you hear a lot of, really successful artists talk about it. It's, hustle, a grind mentality of always getting out there. You meeting, because when you get out there, you meet other artists. You meet, people that might give you an opportunity. Unfortunately, one great tool when I first started painting, I was late to it, but Instagram was great at one point for connecting with people organically.
Yeah.
In 2012, I remember my friend for years had been like, dude, you got to get on Instagram. Dude, you got to get, and I didn't understand why. I was like, why is he telling me to get on?
Yeah.
Because I looked at it like Facebook, I was like, it's a waste of time. But I got on Instagram, and it was when it was still chronological, and it was still organic.
Oh,
and
this is so much chronological,
and organic. The amount of connections I made of other artists whose work I admired, who would like my picture because they just saw it or whatever. Stuff like that was great. But yeah, I just feel like it's doing it. It's creating your work, yes, but then it's doing whatever you can. Every opportunity, right? A musician will play any small bar, any small cafe they have to, because, for most of us, it's not going to work out.
Exactly.
I don't make a living off of my art. I make a side income, but I have a main job. But if you want that fulfilling thing, because most people, they work their job and they go home, and maybe they watch and again, I'm not like judging anyone, but they watch TV, they watch Netflix, they whatever, they spend time with their family, that's great. Art, for us, if you're an artist, that's your fulfilling thing. And then some people have other activities, right? People go exercise, they play intramural sports, whatever. If you're an artist, that's your thing, and then hopefully for you it works out. And then understanding that you're gonna have to put a lot of time in. You don't have to hear it from me, but so many artists, musicians talk about 10,000 hours, 10 years.
Like they were like 300 songs until they got
I was an
like
overnight success,
song,
and it took me 10 years, right?
Yeah.
We generally only see someone when they get notoriety and fame. We don't know that they,
you know, like the struggle era.
Yeah, you don't know that they were selling, their paintings for $10, and they were doing the same
They're
thing.
in front of the mat every day trying to get.
Yeah, exactly. Sending emails out to everyone, trying to get people to come out to their shows. So I always look at it as like it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of investing your time and your energy, and then also accepting that it's not going to happen overnight, and it may not happen to the degree you think. Right? I'm sure in the back of my head, I thought, in 5-10 years, I'll be doing art full time.
Yeah.
Because you make certain gains, and you're like, but we know it's not linear, right? It doesn't go. The line doesn't just go like this.
Yeah. No, but like, do you ever go back like to yourself, like with yourself, and you think, wow, like when I was this age, I really thought like 2-3 years. I worked this hard every day for 6 months. Boom, I got.
Yeah,
this.
no, I thought it, and you get like an opportunity. You're like, this is the first step.
Yeah.
Right. There was a nonprofit that I worked a lot with in the city, and they used to do art auctions every year, and so I was working with them, and then they would solicit work, and so I would donate a piece, and I was in shows with these big artists who I looked up to, and I was like, oh wow, this is like the first step in.
Yeah.
It doesn't work out that way. I accept it, and I keep doing it, because at the end of the day, artists, creatives of all kind, you do it for yourself. You do it for the audience, but you also do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? A guitarist or a poet or whoever is going to write poetry, whether their book is getting published and is a New York Times bestseller or not. I'm going to paint whether it's in a nice studio at 150 Bay or if it was in my dad's basement. I'm going to paint it, no matter what. And I'm going to paint for my whole life, whether I get any type of notoriety or whatever. So, I've heard so many musicians talk to me about this, is like, you don't do it for that, and you don't do it with an expectation. You do it because you love it, basically.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to love it, and, be willing to invest that time, and, I hope it works out for you, because that's the ultimate reward.
And another question, that was a beautiful answer, thank you. Another question, from like a business strategy, because a lot of, I think everybody, like when they start out with artists, they don't realize having like a business strategy versus like an artistic talent strategy is two different things. What's an advice that you kind of like wish when you were starting out, you kind of like thought about or knew of, that you think that was like an advantage?
Well, you know what? One of the good things was I had a professor in my last year. She was a design professor, and she was always, I know design is a little different, than painting and fine art and stuff, but she was talking to us about that. She would always say, like, don't forget, this is a business. I know you're a designer, and we had a lot of really talented illustrators in our design classes who were, a little bit more, on the fine art side, but don't forget that you're a business, meaning sit down, establish what you think you should get an hour, and apply that, to it, because it's always hard to think, oh, I'm going to charge hourly for this drawing or for this painting. Now, you may not necessarily always get to do it that way, but approach it that way, because it's definitely hard for artists, because you don't want to think of your art as a product. But if you're selling it, it is a product.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess determining what you think you should get, always looking at it as such, as a business, so that you value your time and that people will value your time. We all, a lot of times, myself, I'm sure a lot of other artists, you make the mistake of, devaluing, undervaluing yourself, doing something, I guess, sorry, to pivot, one ahead. Business thing I would say is, if someone's asked, don't ever do work pro bono or for free unless you believe in the mission of the company. I'm sure you've had it. I've had opportunities where it's not a nonprofit, trying to get work for free, and I would always say no. I had older, I had my brother's a little bit older than me, and he has some friends that were artists too, and they would give me that advice. As tempting as it seems, it's not free. You don't walk into a restaurant and say, I'll say something really good about your steak if you do this, if you give it to me for free. That happens a lot in art. In design, though, they say like, oh, I'll promote you. It's good experience. It's good exposure. So, think of it that way. Unless it's something, an organization that you strongly believe in their mission, right? Like, I had no problem donating a painting to that nonprofit I talked about, because I believed in their mission. I believed in what they did, and what they continue to do, I think, is really, valuable. And knowing your worth, reading the market, because I always had colleagues always say, well, how do you know how much to price your artwork for? Non-artists and artists. I say, I don't, I go out into the world, I do an art market, I do an art fair, I have a price on there. If it sells, or if I get interest, I know that it's priced appropriately. Or if people are kind of, like, I don't know, I know that I need to bring it down a little bit. Also knowing your audience, like something like 14C, you're going to maybe price it a little higher than if you're doing a street fair, right? And also if it's a work on canvas, if it's a print, so on and so forth. So, I mean, like anything else, though, it's like a learning experience, right? I think the most important thing is, the more you get out there, the more you'll learn about it, right? Because the more feedback you'll get, and there's, for all the people that don't want to give you advice, there's always going to be someone who's been there before you that's going to be willing to give you advice.
You're like the Tony Robbins of the art world, dude.
No,
that's so dope. And I finally remembered the question that I wanted to ask you.
Okay,
I forgot
cool.
earlier. Because I have a lot of problem with this. Are you able, because you said you work with, like, your job is very black and white during the day, it's very precise, it's like mathematically. Are you able to, like, how can I word this? Are you able to kind of turn off your business brain and go into an artistic brain, like in the same day, or not too much, like,
Yeah.
yeah?
I am a little bit. I don't often paint during the week after work. I do sometimes work on the computer creating graphics or whatever for it. Yeah, I am. I mean, I come home and I have dinner and stuff. It's hard because, a manual labor job is physically draining.
Yeah.
So you're tired.
Emotionally, spiritually, physically,
Yeah, exactly.
everything.
Sometimes the last thing you want to do is sit at a
Just do
computer
anything else,
is to do anything else. But again, it's one of those things where you kind of got to push yourself into it. And then also, I do push myself because it's a rewarding, expression of my talents and it's creative, whereas during the day it's very robotic. It's not really creative. I mean, yeah, I'm working with my hands, so there's something there's something redeeming in that, but it's very repetitive, right? There's it's not too new, so yeah, I can do it. Some days are more difficult than others, because it's a really hard thing to kind of switch that creative mind on, especially when it's time constrained, right?
Yeah.
Because it's I mean, we all deal with it. You can't be like, okay, now it's creative time.
Yeah. I can't. I have to do either like business day or art day.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, because it's a different mindset, it's a different approach, it's different everything.
Do you have anything coming out that we can like look forward to?
Yeah, actually on May 11th at ART150, we're going to be having an art crawl. We've been doing these, I guess, 4 times a year. All the artists on the second floor at 150 Bay Street are going to be opening their doors to the public. There's also a gallery space that will be exhibiting work from artists within the building and also from other organizations. And I know Departed Souls, the brewery on the ground floor of 150 Bay, will be having a cash bar.
A cash bar, guys.
Yes.
That's beer.
Yep. And, it really should be a really good time. We've done, I think, 2 or 3 of them already. And then you just continue to bring more people into ART150 because there's a lot of good stuff going on there.
May 11th, 5 to 9. Get the word out, please.
That's right. I forgot the time, 5 to 9 p.m. And everybody come on out.
Yes, please. And do you mind sharing your website and Instagram with us?
Sure. My website is lawrenceciarallo.com. That's LawrenceCiarallo.com. And my Instagram is Lawrence Ciarallo, spelled the same way.
Okay, perfect. I was just about to ask you because I was like, I have no idea how to even spell it or attempt to. And another question, that because we had previous artists get like inquiries about commission. If people like your work, but they want to like gift for like Mother's Day or Father's Day coming up, can they like reach out to you for commissions? Are you open for commissions? Yeah, I'm open for commissions. If you're on my website, there's an email that you can hit, and you just send it on over to me. And open for commissions. I've done digital work for people and works on canvas, all sizes. So. Perfect. Yep. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you. Thanks for having me. So interesting to talk to you. Finally, we meet in person. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much, and hopefully we see each other around on your next adventure. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Tariq Talk. Follow Tariq Talk on all social media channels and check out the video interviews online.